Hello everyone and welcome back to Geotech Masters. In our previous episodes, we learned how to identify a rock's name, describe its color, and estimate its strength using a hammer. Today we are going to talk about what happens when that rock starts to rot. We are discussing weathering and alteration. Specifically, we are looking at the rock material itself, the small piece you hold in your hand. We are not looking at the whole mountain or the rock mass yet. We'll cover that in a later module. Understanding weathering is critical because a rock that looks strong in a fresh cut might turn into mud once it is exposed to rain and air. We need to know how to describe this state accurately to predict how the rock will behave under a building or inside a tunnel. Let's get started.
Before we dive into the definitions, here are the key questions we will answer today. First, when a rock breaks down, is it just breaking into smaller pieces, or is it chemically changing into clay? The standard uses two very specific words for this: disintegrated and decomposed. Do you know the difference? Second, have you ever seen a rock sample that looked fine when it came out of the ground, but turned into a pile of dust after sitting in the core box for a week? Or maybe it turned into mud when it got wet? We need to know how to test for this slaking behavior. Finally, we often hear the words weathering and alteration used interchangeably, but for a geologist or geotechnical engineer, they mean different things. We will clarify how to report these effects according to the ISO 14689 standard. First, let's clear up a definition. Weathering is the process where rock breaks down due to the atmosphere, rain, and temperature changes at the Earth's surface. It is what turns mountains into soil over millions of years. Alteration, on the other hand, happens deep underground. It involves hot gases or fluids changing the rock's minerals. For example, hot water can turn hard granite into soft clay deep in a fault zone. While the geological origins are different, ISO 14689 notes that the effects on the rock material are often described using the same terms. Whether the rock is weak because of rain or because of hot thermal fluids, we need to describe its current condition accurately. When we describe weathering in rock material,